Hey, good morning. It's 9:01, so we're going to get started. Welcome to the CDTC Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. To confirm, you can all still see okay, apologies. I think there's a little bit of an echo there. That should be fixed. Okay. So again, just to confirm, can everyone see the slide in the full screen slide, or is it in presenter mode?
I see it full screen.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to read off the folks that I see online right now, and then we'll have everyone that's in our conference room introduce themselves. So I have David Wooden, Jeff Olson, Megan Fennell, Peter Newton, Tina Carton, Ed Brennan, Ethan Warren, John Mitchell, and Valerie Dean. And then we'll go around the table here. Linda Vonderheide, Rose McGann,
Addison Stewart,
And Virginia, CP McCarrett.
thank you. And I'm Jen Saponis from CDTC. So as you heard, we actually are very lucky. We have some of our student participants here today. Since school's out, they can make it to a meeting in person. So we're very happy to have them here. Did I miss anyone that's on the Zoom that I may not be seeing, or don't think I did? And okay, so with that, I'm going to introduce Jeff Olson. Many of you may be familiar with Jeff from his work at Alta and other consulting and bicycle and pedestrian work. Jeff is now venturing into electric micromobility world and has been doing a lot of work and research on that. So I've asked him to join us today to talk about electric micromobility. Jeff joined us last, I think, in 2020 to talk about kind of like the landscape of electric micromobility and some of the projects that he's working on. But I thought, there's been a lot of questions about e-scooters, e-bikes, and what does that mean for like the existing infrastructure, and what does that mean for planning for the future, and how are communities supposed to be managing this? And so I thought Jeff would be a great person to have here today to kind of shine some light on some of the stuff he's been working on, and provide some his perspective, since he's done a lot of work in active transportation planning and is shifting into this new electric mobility world. So Jeff, I'll pass it to you. Do you have slides or anything, or do you just?
No, I think we'll just keep this easy this morning. Hello, everyone. Sound check. Okay, everything good?
Hear you very well.
All right, good. The two questions today: what has changed and what's the future? And I'm going to break that into three parts: good news, other news, and some trends. And first of all, hello everyone. It's great that we're starting to get back to in-person meetings. Our last discussion was in the middle of about the worst of the pandemic. I think. I hope everyone is doing okay, and it's been a tough couple of years to say the least. But during that period of time, Recharge, which is a startup I'm directly involved in, co-founder of, has produced a working prototype of a device and system that can charge multiple types of batteries for electric micromobility. So whether it's a scooter, a one-wheel, a longboard, a bicycle, a wheelchair, anything that's low-powered electric micromobility, we now have the capability to charge that in public space wirelessly. This is the first of its kind. It was funded by New York State Energy, by NYSERDA. Thanks to them. We've been working on this project for a number of years, and it's pretty extraordinary to put together a working prototype of a device with a team that couldn't meet in person for a couple of years. We demonstrated that product last spring here in the Capital Region at CDTA's headquarters, and thank you to CDTA for your ongoing support of this project. I'm happy to note that we are opening a new office at the eTech building at UAlbany, effective tomorrow. We'll actually be having our first meeting there. So this is a made in New York project. My business partner, Julien Bouget, is from Albany, even though he's a French wind energy physicist. And we're pretty excited to see that start to move forward. We've been out, chasing around for capital and investment money. We have our first significant angel investor, and we'll be using some of those resources to develop a pilot at the eTech Center starting this fall. So you'll actually be able to come out and see this thing not that far from now. So this is a big change, because when you look at the way electric vehicle charging has happened, the rollout has been almost 100% oriented at charging cars. We'll talk about that as sort of other news now that I've been through the good news. And now the potential exists, assuming we can grow this company to scale, to allow for multiple operators, multiple owners, and multiple vehicle types to all be charged on a common platform. And that is, to some extent, game-changing for this industry. You will note that some of the industry players, including Lyft, which owns the bike share company that I was co-founder of, CDTC, the bike shares in DC, Boston, San Francisco, and other cities. Lyft is now rolling out their first charging stations. They have realized that the cost of charging batteries by driving around and swapping them is not cost effective at all. And when you see major players like Lyft start hearing some background noise from someone there, it's maybe a phone that could get muted.
Okay, good.
Sounds like someone at home got their background on. See if we can get past that. As other major players start to realize that the capability of charging all these devices can't really be done one company at a time, which is exclusive. It can't be done by one vehicle type at a time. And that's why we feel we have a solution that will really change the industry. So in the other news, we get to some of the programs that we're talking about here at CDTC. Now, as many of you know, there's an $8 billion electric vehicle charging program in this country that's in the transportation bill. The amount of money that's going to charge things other than cars in that program is currently zero. $8 billion worth of electric vehicle charging, and the only thing we're going to charge with that money is cars. We have completely left out the idea that there are other types of electric vehicles that run in our communities and that will become even more popular. It's pretty disappointing, because the amount of energy that it requires to charge an electric bike or scooter, we can charge 100 vehicles for the amount of energy it'll take to charge a single car. And so the equity question of, are we going to charge electric micromobility for hundreds of people at the expense of charging a single automobile? And the automobiles, whether they're electric or gas, are going to have, as we all know, the same set of issues that they have. We'll still have the same traffic jam. We're still going to have the same congestion in our cities. We're still going to have the same lack of access to mobility for people who can't afford cars. And essentially the EV program, if you look at how it's going to function, is oriented primarily at the interstate highways, secondarily at major state and federal numbered highways in the states. And then after that, if there's some coins left over, maybe a couple cities will do something innovative. But that program, I know there's a meeting coming up on July 20th at CDTC for public comment, but they've already rolled this out. The guidance was already set, very top down. And don't get me wrong, I drive a plug-in car. I think it's a great thing. I think lots of us are going to drive them. But that's really because I own a home where I can park my car and charge it, and I can recharge it in public if there's a charging station. That's not the majority of people, and that's not really in any way equitable, in my opinion. There's a call for a national advisory group on electric vehicles that's happening. The New York State Climate Change Action Plan is in process. That also, up to this point, has not mentioned active transportation or micromobility. All the emphasis that we're seeing is targeted to electric cars, and we're seeing that kind of across the board. So we're creating another uphill battle that really wasn't necessary from the beginning. We are excluding a significant, very fast-moving and very beneficial form of transportation that can have huge climate change impacts very quickly. As I mentioned, the amounts of energy that are needed for micromobility are a fraction. The level of power that we need to supply our recharge docks is the equivalent of a toaster oven, whereas many of the car charging stations that we're seeing put in are essentially small electrical substations and are requiring as much energy as a building. So, it's a huge mismatch between what the grid could deliver, the amount of electricity that's required, the amount of energy required, and the amount of mobility. Very much the same as what I would refer to as acoustic bikes and scooters that don't need to be plugged in, and people walking. As many of you know, I've tried to help make those modes of transportation more significant at the state, local, national, and international levels my whole career. And it's the same problem being reiterated in the sphere of electrics. So just to take that to maybe a positive way to wrap this up, when you look at the big trends that are starting to shape beyond the issues that we've just talked about, shared mobility through the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic is significantly up, particularly when you look globally, but true here in the United States. When we had, I'll pick City Bike just because everyone knows it, when we were running the bike share company, and City Bike was hitting 45,000 trips a day. We thought that was unbelievable. Now it's regularly 145,000 trips a day. So that has continued to grow, and I think will grow even more as you're seeing infrastructure programs happen. New York City is doing 300 miles of new protected lanes, the mayor recently announced. All the other funds that are in the new infrastructure bill, whether it's TAP or the others, all have significant increases in funding. And as one investor told us recently, what we're trying to do is inevitable, that the growth in these modes of travel are an integral part of what's going to happen in cities all over the world. I think we're going to see more and more of it. While I do believe that we need to emphasize walking, bicycling, and non-motorized transportation as a top priority, the electrics have their own advantages and certainly help lots of people go travel easier and quicker. And especially in regions like ours where things are dispersed and we don't have quite as many short trips as you have in the bigger cities. So I feel very positive about what's going on. Obviously there's a tone of frustration in my voice that some of the programs that are accelerating new ideas are not necessarily supporting them in the same fair and balanced way, if that's a phrase we can still use in this country. But I think we're going to get there, and I think it's a pretty exciting time to be involved in this. If anybody wants to get in touch with me to know more about not just what we're doing with Recharge, but what's happening at the other levels in the state, nationally, and internationally, I'm very happy to help out. So I'll keep that short. Jen, I don't know if you want to try and do some quick Q&A. I'm very happy to do that.
Yeah, we can open it up to questions. If folks want to unmute themselves and ask a question or raise their hand or put it in the chat, we can do that. I mean,
I'll just jump into one. I know it's going to come up. I'll jump ahead because one is going to be, well, how do we regulate and manage the use of these things on existing facilities? And that's a question we get asked all the time. I'm a firm believer that the facilities that we've spent the last, and many of us here on this call have been involved in, projects, the Empire State Trail, so many others locally, that were intended for slow speed travel that is safe, starting with pedestrians first. And I think we absolutely have to address that. There's a tremendous amount of technology work going on. If you look at like Super Pedestrian, the scooter company, we've been working with, now has built intelligence into their scooters to make sure they are on the street. They aren't operating on sidewalks where they shouldn't. Speed newer devices that are coming out, because we don't want to create another safety problem that is made worse by the incompatibility of fast moving things where we have slower moving people. So there's a lot of technical questions about whether previously funded non-motorized facilities can actually use the electrics on them. A lot of places are addressing that. The Empire State Trail, for example, allows Class 1 electric vehicles to be used, which means they can't be throttled. They have to be pedaled, and that hopefully reduces some of that. But if you look at, say, the west side of Manhattan now and go out there this afternoon, or I would say along the Hudson here in Albany, you'll probably see all kinds of electrics. You'll see them on Madison Avenue using the bike lanes. I'll see them here in Saratoga. We've reached the point where seeing a one wheel go by or electric longboard or dozens of other throttle controlled entities are out there in public. They're not going to go away. The question is how best to manage them. And to me, the key issue is speed, just as it is with the speed of motor vehicles on our streets.
Thanks, Jeff. That's definitely a question that comes up often. I have a question, I guess, about like the charging and the integrating like that infrastructure into our transportation system. What we're seeing with electric vehicles is looking at using like streetlights or other existing, infrastructure to create opportunities for vehicles to charge. Are those also opportunities for bikes to charge? And how different is the infrastructure, and can we be doing like these plugs or
Yeah.
like together?
Thank you, because that's one of the biggest opportunities. We've been working with that with different utilities, with different manufacturers that are making new light poles. Washington, D.C. has got a new innovation district, and we're talking to them about they're actually replacing all of the city streetlights. And again, what we need is a 20 amp circuit. The amount of power that's required to be charging the batteries on electric bikes and scooters is so small that amount of power is generally out there in public. It's a matter of getting the attention of people who are involved in making these decisions and realizing that if you're going to replace all your streetlights and you put a convenience outlet in each one, we could provide a station that not only will allow people to charge their bikes and scooters, but their iPhones and tablets and other devices that, as long as we can create a compatible standard for the transmitter and receiver parts. And most of that is on the way to happening. So what's the challenge is trying to get a car charged at curbside using a street light or other public device, because again, you're using kilowatts of power, not small amounts of juice. So I really hope that we're going to start to see some of that collaboration. We're actually talking with some of the, and have been talking for quite a while with some of the innovative curbside car charging companies to make what they provide more inclusive, so that it's possible to be a place where you could charge a car, but you could also charge a bike or your iPhone. And also, so if anyone knows other opportunities where that's happening, please let us know, because we'd love to test that out. Again, what we're doing with our company at this point is very much at the we're a little bit beyond startup stage, and a lot of opportunity for change to happen. And that's how you learn. We're going to try out all kinds of things. So we're looking for those opportunities. And I would add, I know there's students in the room too, and maybe others that are listening. We have some intern opportunities. If things go well and we do raise enough capital, we'll be hiring some new people. And as I mentioned, we'd like to make this as made in New York as we possibly can. Made in the 518 if we really can. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Hi, Jeff. This is Tina. So Flow, there's city of Cambridge. There's a number of cities that are installing street chargers. Are you working with utilities here? Because National Grid has the electric vehicle charger program. So I think making them understand that there are these other charging opportunities, at street level, because you coordinate with, if we did say on street parking in Saratoga, I would be coordinating with National Grid for the wiring infrastructure. So I was just wondering if you've been working with, speaking to the utilities as you're trying to expand this model.
Yeah, in fact, one of our advisors that we work with very early on is from a utility and helped us think through the process of how that electrical connection gets made for the amount of power that we need. And that's part of what helped us realize that it's completely doable. When you look at, say, 5G connections for wireless service, they're running off very similar connections in urban space, often tied to places like streetlights at intersections. And traffic signals now are becoming intelligent. We have, plenty of places to do that. The challenge has been getting through this is no different than it was getting walking and biking into transportation to begin with, decades ago. It's a very similar thing, is that it's just hard to get people to see that what we're not doing now is something that lots of people want to do, and that we should be helping to provide that opportunity. So really, anyone here, if you are in that conversation with a utility, we've been working with those organizations. As I said, we've been working with lighting manufacturers. It's a constant thing of trying to find the right combination of places that want to make that opportunity happen, and we're open to that, to seeing that happen. So, and Tina, thank you for the EV demo event that you were part of in Saratoga a couple weeks ago. If there are other events like that in the region, we'd certainly be happy to participate.
Are there any other questions for Jeff? Otherwise, I've got many.
And I don't want to take up your whole meeting either. I know this was only part of your agenda, so don't.
That's okay.
And I can take questions later by email if we don't get to them today.
Okay. I think Rogerio, you have a question.
Yeah, Jeff, just wondering if your company also supports schools planning to use EV buses.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about starting our new space at ETech, the Entrepreneurship Center at UAlbany, is our first pilot will be at a university. So we're going to start to see how that starts to work. Again, this is very early deployment stages. I'm not talking to you all yet about a mature company that's gone beyond the prototype stage. But yeah, and it's funny. I was in Rutland, Vermont, where there's a large Tesla installation of their chargers directly across the street from the high school, and most of those high school kids aren't driving a Tesla. And what a great thing if that amount of power had been used to provide e-bikes and scooters for the students at a local high school, and they could have all been charging their equipment, their devices during the day there. I think those are great opportunities, and it's going to be the same challenge of getting through people realizing that, look, we're going to electrify school buses. That's going on right now as well. A huge program to provide electricity for school buses. I haven't yet to hear a school saying, for the same amount of money, we could actually give a lot of kids e-bikes and let them bike to school. These are the kinds of changes. If you're out there thinking those things, it really takes people on the ground saying that we're going to innovate and do something different and change the way we are getting around. And that's often not the first thing people think in this country. We're seeing lots of it in other places around the world, but not often our first thought here. So if you know a school that wants to try that out, we would be very, very interested in finding that. A good example, it's not a school, but I'll just use it as an example because it happened last week. New York City Housing Authority apparently is in the process of banning the charging of electric bikes at public housing authority sites in New York City, which is interesting because back when we owned the bike share company, we provided bike share stations at all of the public housing authority sites that were in our service area. And we did that in all the cities we were in. And we did it in Boston, in Chicago, and DC. And that's a real negative for people who do, in fact, have electric bikes. Many of them are workers in the delivery industry, to not be able to charge their vehicles. And the reason for that is safety. They don't want people bringing the batteries into their homes. There's already been a battery fire in the Bronx, and there have been a number of them in other places. That's part of the problem we solve. It would be great for schools as well, is that since our system is wireless, there's no physical contact. The battery doesn't get removed. It doesn't get plugged into something. You just dock your bike or your scooter and it charges itself. So we're going to be talking to the New York City Housing Authority as soon as we possibly can. But these things take time. And again, it really, if there's a school board out there that says, yeah, this is what we want to do, we'll be right there trying to help.
In the chat, Ethan asked how different are charging requirements for e-bike from a regular house outlet. Tina responded that it's the same outlet needed to charge your phone. It's really that.
Yeah, it's a little bit more, but not much. We have an e-bike here that we charge at a regular 110 outlet. It goes from 10% left on the battery to 100% charged in less than 2 hours, and that's just a normal outlet. all of that's going to happen faster and quicker. We expect that bikes and scooters will be able to charge curbside in a half an hour's time as the battery technology improves. We would love to see it possible, and a lot of people ask about solar. When we were the largest bike share fleet operator in North America, and all of our stations were solar at that time. We were barely able to charge 2 marine cell batteries that provided energy for our communications, so you could swipe your credit card or run your membership key at a station, and that barely worked. It worked, but it had its own challenges. Again, these are technology advances that if we really, as a country, as a world, put our mind to it, the advances in battery and solar technology really could continue to make a huge change happen. But it's just not there yet. Will it be there in 5 years? I sure hope so. So yeah, that amount of power that you need to charge an electric bike or scooter literally is the outlet that's sitting in your office or your home. Very easy to provide outdoors, very safe because it's very low amounts of power. It's just that thought of saying we're not going to put all of our effort into just cars, which is honestly, that's been true about transportation in this country for a long time. We've got to get past that point and realize that it's not just about cars, that cars are okay. Like I said, I have one. I think they're a wonderful thing. They're just not going to provide 100% of what we need to do. And with that said, I would not say that I don't think e-bikes and scooters are going to be a 100% solution either. So if we could get 10%, 20% of our mobility out of small scale bikes, scooters, and other forms of e-mobility, that would be a tremendous, tremendous change in this country and make a huge dent in what we're trying to do with climate change, equity, economy, all these other benefits that come with that. Like I said, 100 trips for every 1 car that gets charged can be done by electric bikes and scooters. I think if we can do that for 1% of our investment, 100 times more trips, I think that's a bet we should make.
Another question in the chat asks if there are examples of municipalities that are requiring publicly available e-bike charging in development alongside EV charging.
Yeah, it's interesting. That is starting to happen, but I'm going to say starting to happen again. I went to Celebration, Florida, which was one of the new urbanist towns built by the Disney company outside of Orlando. And I would say it was more than 20 years ago. And they did exactly that. Celebration was built with curbside EV chargers, initially for golf carts, because that was a major form of low-powered mobility there. And they have curbside electric charging has been there for decades since the community was built. I know Tina just mentioned Cambridge, Mass, Austin, Texas, San Francisco Bay Area. There's a couple towns working with it right now. The challenge on that is obviously much more about the cars and the larger scale vehicles because of the amounts of electricity. It's not a simple thing to do. There are challenges with how that electricity gets metered and sold. You're essentially putting buildings worth of electricity at the curb, but it's not being used full time in the same way that a building would be. So a lot of the EV charging providers don't necessarily want to pay for 24/7 use of that electricity that's only used intermittently when a vehicle is being charged. But the utilities, that's how it gets metered and sold in every other installation they've had. So there's a disconnect between the way utilities sell that electricity and the way the companies that want to do curbside charging are interested in buying it. We don't have that same problem because we're looking at such small quantities of electricity that it's just so much easier to do. But yes, we're going to start seeing that. There's a whole team working on it in New York City right now. Most other may get electricity to where all the electric vehicles, from mopeds to bikes to scooters to cars, trucks, buses. That is a big challenge when you have to deal with the larger vehicles. And Tina, I see your chat. Yeah, Montreal, Toronto, all over Europe. I mean, Asia. I didn't even get started on what's going on in other parts of the world. The revolution that's happening with particularly motorized rickshaws and mopeds throughout Asia is game changing, because you look at the amount of pollution that's come from two-stroke engines on three-wheelers and two-wheelers. And that's going to change. That's all. That's going to be electric, and is going to be a major contributor to reducing climate change.
All right, so it is 9:30, but Jeff, if you don't mind, I'll put your email address in the notes, so if people have other
Yeah.
questions, reach out.
And for those of you who don't know, I live in Saratoga. I'm local. I've been here most of my life, so happy to entertain questions and comments at any point.
Great, and I put the links to both the NEVI program and the upcoming webinar that DOT is hosting on July 20th in the chat. And then I'll also mention that the carbon reduction program, which is also part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, that program is requiring states to develop a carbon reduction strategy in consultation with MPOs, so like CDTC. Those plans are due by November 15th, 2023. So we expect the state to be developing this plan and to include strategies that include electric micromobility and shifting trips to other modes. So we'll definitely, hopefully we'll see some progress on this in the near future.
And a big thank you to all of you who are trying to make things like this happen. It isn't always easy, but if it was easy, somebody would have already done it. So just keep up the good work and innovate and make change happen. That's what we need.
Well, thank you, Jeff. All right, so now I'm going to switch to the presentation. Everyone, please.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Please bear with me while. Okay. Can everyone see the slide?
Looks good.
Okay, thank you. All right. So moving on to our next agenda item, I wanted to give a brief update on the 2022-27 TIP update schedule. So the draft TIP was approved to be released for public review and consultation at the last policy board meeting, but it was approved pending receiving the updated project list from DOT. So CDTC did receive that last week. We've updated the project listings and the TIP document, and we have shared that with our policy board so that we just have to wait 24 hours to get their approval. And then we officially move into the public review and consultation period. So there'll be a press release coming out from CDTC on how to provide feedback and all of, some comments on the process and how to get involved. Right now we have several outreach events scheduled. We have a virtual workshop scheduled for Tuesday, July 19th at 6 o'clock in the evening. That's a public workshop. And we'll go through the whole TIP update process and talk about the projects that have been programmed, and then summarize how the funding, how things kind of fell, right? So what % went to local versus state, what % went to preservation versus beyond preservation, what went to bicycle pedestrian projects versus bridges versus highways. That'll all be broken down and explained at that workshop. Then we'll have an open house at Saratoga, at the Saratoga County Office Building in Ballston Spa on the evening of July 27th. And that will be, people will be able to kind of come and go. We'll have large boards with information about the TIP. We'll have a video of information about the TIP kind of on a reel going through. And we'll have staff there so people can ask questions, leave comments, take a poll. And then we're also trying to schedule some pop-up events. So these are just kind of like tabling or informal events at community types of things that are going on around the region. Right now we have one scheduled Saturday, July 30th at the Troy Farmers Market. We are looking to do more of those. So if you have a community concert or a community type of event that's going on and you think it might be appropriate for us to be there and just do some quick outreach, just kind of giving out our worksheets and letting people take polls, having QR codes displayed so people can get to the website. Let us know, and we would like to schedule more of those. And then our final open house will be August 2nd at the Albany Public Library main branch. So right now, the tip information and materials are available on the CDTC website, and we continue to update that, and we'll have an interactive poll and some more features to encourage people to provide feedback. So you may have seen the TAP and CMAC awards were announced by New York State. So almost 179 million was awarded to 75 communities across New York State. Of that, the capital region received over $27 million. And and that includes all of Region 1. So as you may know, Region 1 includes not just the CDTC urban area, but also includes Washington, Warren counties, and Greene and Columbia. So as you can see, almost all of those projects that were awarded are right here in our 4-county region, except for the Village of Kinderhook's pedestrian and bicycle improvements project. So the region did really well, and there's some really great projects that received funding through that round. The Capital Coexist program is still open. We are accepting projects, applications for demonstrations and for law enforcement safety events. We've also reserved funding for bike skill safety training. So that solicitation is also out, and we're reviewing them on a rolling basis. So that'll stay open until we spend all of the funds. Also, just as a reminder, the CDTC CDRPC Technical Assistance Program is also open. This is a partnership between us and the Regional Planning Commission, and we provide, some free technical, well, it's not free. There's a 25% match required, but it can be cash or in kind. And these are for kind of smaller scale planning projects and initiatives. CDTC created a webpage for the bipartisan infrastructure law information. There's a lot of programs that are being announced and rulemakings that are being announced almost every single day. And it's a lot to keep track of, especially if you're a community that's looking to, looking to take advantage of some of these funding opportunities and apply for a project. So the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program, the applications are due September 15th. CDTC developed what we're calling a self-certification checklist to certify the eligibility and assist communities in applying for implementation funds. So all of that can be found on the CDTC website. We'll work with DOT on both the NEVI and as we learn more about the carbon reduction program. There's also a pilot program for TOD planning, and then there's the Reconnecting Communities pilot program that funding is available for now. Applications are due October 13th of this year. And then there's the DOT launched a Thriving Communities Initiative, excuse me, which is a web page that provides some technical assistance to communities that might be interested in applying for some of these grants. So there's some mapping tools there. There's some information and resources that may help you in deciding whether or not to apply or in your application. Oh, Valerie commented. That's right. The economic development councils, which play a role in like the CFAs, and I'm not sure if this applies to TAP CMAC, but maybe it does, don't directly correspond to the CDTC area or the Region 1 area. So just, I guess, keep that in mind as some awards are announced, is that sometimes the regional economic development councils announce awards and their region is different than the CDTC region, which is different than the DOT region. They make it very easy to follow along and understand what's going on. So if you're interested in any of the programs that have been announced in the bipartisan infrastructure law, please check out the webpage we created and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. The New Visions virtual learning series continues, and our next webinar is Tuesday, July 19th. And we'll have Sandy Misowitz, our executive director, and Mark Castiglione, the executive director of the Capital District Regional Planning Commission, provide an overview of what can your regional planning agency do for you. So it'll be a presentation, but also just a discussion about the types of assistance that CDTC and CDRPC can provide to local communities, some examples of how we've worked with local communities to progress projects and help communities implement plans and other initiatives. And I'm not going to go through all of these. These were attached to the agenda and they'll be in the notes. We don't have, it's the same status as we distributed in June. And we won't have another status update for probably until our September meeting, but many of, as you can see, CDTC right now is supporting a number of linkage and technical assistance and other regional projects. Some projects that are coming to a close include the Patroon Greenway feasibility study. We are expected to have the final materials for that later this week. So that project is considered basically complete. And if you haven't already, the Federal Street Corridor study is doing public outreach. There's a participate at your own pace, kind of self-led public input, virtual kind of feedback portal that was created, and you can find information at fixfederalstreet.com. The other, trying to think of other ones that might be worth mentioning. Yeah, other projects are moving along and will provide updates as things happen. So I also wanted to just give an update from CDTA. They couldn't, Lindsay and Steve couldn't be here today to talk about CDPHP cycle and Scoot, but they wanted to let us know that there's been over 20,000 rides this season, despite starting later. Menands and Waterville Leaks are the newest riding areas in the system. And they had some bugs, but they have shifted over to QR code controllers instead of the push button bikes. Ridership is up in both Warren and Schenectady counties, and they're continuing to work with operations vendors for arrival of the e-bikes, which they expect toward the end of this season. For Scoot, which is the electric scooter program, they're still working to tie up final logistical details on the scooters, and they have a goal of releasing them by the end of July. So you probably have seen the bikes out and about in the region. It seems like ridership is steady, or if not increasing. And Tina commented that the URL codes work so much better than remembering your code and inputting it. So hopefully those changes are helping people quite a bit. Does anyone, we have plenty of time, so if anyone has an update on a project or a plan that they want to talk about, unmute and talk about it.
That's something.
Okay.
City of Troy is overhauling their entire zoning when they have actually a brand new zoning law. I just got done reviewing it. And my first community that requires bike parking for commercial uses and things like that. No electrical bike charging, but at least they have required bike parking short-term and long-term.
That's great. Is the draft of the Troy zoning out to the public yet?
I
Or
don't think so.
Okay.
I would hope so, because he sent it to me, so
Mhm.
I think the city's gonna vote on it in the end of this month or early next month.
Okay, yeah, Ethan said the zoning is out, so maybe I can find a link to it and put it in the meeting notes. Any other program or project updates, or if there are events upcoming that other people might want to know about? Nothing? Okay. I did want to also mention that CDTC is going to be deploying some of the trail counters again this fall. So we have some locations in mind, but if you have a project or something and you'd like to get, and there's a trail nearby and you'd like to get a count, let us know and we can work it into our schedule for that. Thank you, Ethan. He shared the link to Troy's zoning. But we had one of our counters stolen last year, and we've been trying to figure out a more secure way of installing them and making people aware that they are CDTC. So we have some, property of stickers, and we're going to use some steel cable and locks and see if that works. So so if you have a location that you're thinking would be good to do a count on, please let me know. Our next meeting is scheduled for September 13th. There will not be an August meeting. We've been meeting every month for this whole year so far, so we're due for a break. So we'll be meeting in August, and unless anything changes, we'll still continue to offer these meetings hybrid. So we do hope some people come and join us here in the office. Otherwise, you can participate virtually. And there's a couple comments in the chat. I'll just read. The Complete Streets funding bill sponsored by Pat Fahey passed both Assembly and Senate and is awaiting signature by the governor. So I did not know that. So thank you for that update, Ed. With that, we will see everyone in September. I hope everyone has a great rest of their week and a great rest of their summer.
Thank you.